Glad to see you. Today's tale is prepared. Let's get started and remember to subscribe for future stories. She said, Not tonight, I'm exhausted. That's all right, I'll alter my plans, I replied. Without looking at me, she was already half-turned towards the bedroom, her phone glowing with a calendar reminder for an event walkthrough in town. I remained where I stood, jacket on, bag by the door, nodding as if it were normal. She thought adjust meant tomorrow. She kissed my cheek, hurried and absent-mindedly, asking if I could pick her up downtown later if the rideshare prices spiked. That night was no exception. That was the issue. The same phrase seemed to hit certain nights with an odd sense of accuracy. It always coincided with her events. Always when the location was that bar on Market Street. Always followed by a schedule adjustment that never accounted for me. She departed from the apartment before 10, clad for an informal setting, neither a date nor a meeting. I observed her enter a vehicle I hadn't requested, waved briefly, and shut the door afterwards. I didn't message. I didn't trail. I didn't inquire about her return. By midnight, I retrieved her coat to hang it correctly. Her evening bag, used solely for outings, fell from its perch and landed on the floor. Upon impact, it gaped open. Lip balm, a folded event plan, and a weighty labeled key tumbled near my foot. Not a residential key, not a car key. Solid, branded, black-tagged. The name of the bar engraved into it. I picked up this key and flipped it over. Partners Only was inscribed on its reverse side. I verified her work bag out of routine. No key found there. I checked the drawer where she stored extra venue access. It was vacant. I returned the key to its original spot within the bag, zipped it shut, and replaced it on the chair. That was the night I adapted. The subsequent day commenced according to her timetable, not mine. She arrived back after 2 hours. With a pair of shoes in one hand and a jacket slung over her arm, she walked through the apartment silently, as if accustomed to being there alone. I was already awake, tie fastened, laptop set up at the dining table, going over compliance language for a municipal subcontract. She stopped when she noticed I was awake, flashed a faint, instinctive smile, and mentioned that she had stayed over at a friend's place because the job ran late. She spoke it offhandedly, as if there was no need for further explanation. She made coffee, leaned against the counter, scrolled through her phone, and asked if I was available next Thursday for a donor reception. I replied that I would check my schedule. That week followed a predictable course. On the days when her events were at Market Street Bar, the evenings shortened. She dressed hastily. She spoke rapidly. The phrase, "not tonight," came early, delivered without resistance, without remorse. On the nights she worked elsewhere, she lingered. She inquired about my audits. She suggested a weekend off together. On Thursday, I informed her I couldn't attend the donor reception. She didn't object, but acknowledged it with a nod. Later that evening, she posted pictures from the event, one of which showed her closely cropped but not clearly. The bar owner stood next to her, their arms untouched. It was unnecessary for his arm to touch her. The following Saturday, we were invited to an industry mixer. I arrived on time. She turned up 40 minutes late, deep in conversation, moving through the room with him trailing behind. When she spotted me, she paused, reassessed, then waved as if I were a colleague. On our ride home, she discussed logistics and deadlines. She didn't grab my hand. 2 days later, I signed a new contract. The contract was finalized on a Monday afternoon. I went over it twice before signing, flagged the conflict of interest clause, and filed a disclosure form immediately afterward. From that moment on, my evenings filled up quickly. Deadlines accumulated. Evaluations of my work arrived successively. Instead of social invitations, tasks returned home with me. I didn't disclose the alteration. Instead, I ceased to be reachable. The initial recognition was understated. She inquired on a Wednesday whether I could visit a bar following work, merely for 10 minutes, simply to make an appearance. I declared myself bound by a deadline and sent her a screenshot of my calendar commitments. She responded with a thumbs up and didn't follow up. The subsequent attempt was earlier in the day. She messaged about a late setup and suggested it would be significant if I could come before closing. I explained that my contract forbade non-essential appearances at public venues related to my audit scope. I attached the relevant section. She perused it but didn't respond further. At home, there were no explosions. This was peculiar. She continued discussing her events. She continued arranging outfits on the bed. She still inquired about my meals. However, the pattern altered. She ceased asking about when I would finish work. She ceased accommodating my calendar, followed by modifications on her social media. Less couple pictures, more group snaps, and an abundance of them. The bar proprietor occupied the spot I once stood at, close enough to seem presumed, familiar enough to not be questioned. One evening, she returned home early, deposited her bag, and declared that the event ended prematurely. She waited expectantly, as if a response was due. I remained engrossed in my laptop, mentioning a deadline. She observed me for a moment, then went to take a shower. For the first time in weeks, she made no comment about "not tonight." The strain manifested itself in logistics before it surfaced in words. She initiated requests for things she had never required from me before. Could I forward a city contact for her? Check if a permit timeline looked normal? Verify if a noise exemption would pass review? I responded to each request as I did at work, concisely, factually, and thoroughly, without offering any favors or shortcuts. One afternoon, she emailed me a preliminary design for an upcoming city council gathering and inquired about her concerns regarding the guest list seeming sparse. I assured her it was above minimum attendance requirements and closed my laptop. For hours, she remained unresponsive. That evening, she took longer than normal to get ready. She switched outfits on 2 occasions, spent excessive time examining herself in the mirror, and queried if I would be arriving home early. I informed her of my delay. She hesitated before asking if I was upset with her. I stated I had a deadline to meet. At the event, I wasn't present. Instead, the bar owner was. Photos were posted even before the night concluded. He appeared in several pictures beside her, holding an unordered drink. Someone labeled him as a business partner, while another added a heart emoji. When she returned home, she didn't immediately retreat to our bedroom. Instead, she remained in the living room, perusing mail, accidentally picked up my phone, and then replaced it face down. She inquired if I had seen the photos. I responded that I hadn't. In the subsequent week, she returned home with an additional lanyard from a bar, hung it on the hook near the door before returning it to her bag. Her pace seemed accelerated, as though time itself was urging her forward. The initial hint arrived on a Friday. She inquired about my availability for a city council gathering next month. I replied that I was already registered. She expressed relief with a smile and assured me she would see me there. I made no correction. The error wasn't sensational. It lacked the intensity of shouting or slamming doors. Instead, it presented itself as self-assuredness. A week before the event, she ceased inquiring about my evening whereabouts. She merely assumed. She informed others that I was engrossed in audits, said so with a semi-amused tone that implied a temporary arrangement. She became more frequent at the bar, setting up late, wandering its halls after hours, and returning home on nights when she had apparently been elsewhere, dressed casually for work initially but not upon her return. One night, she returned home earlier than anticipated and discovered me engaged in a video conference, camera active, jacket discarded, discussing with a review board. She lingered beyond the frame, eavesdropping. Upon the call's conclusion, she expressed surprise that my new agreement was so significant. I responded it was legally binding. She chuckled slightly, implying there was no need for such formality between us. 2 days hence, she initiated her action. She requested a favor concerning the upcoming gathering. Nothing substantial, merely a swift review of the venue papers. She mentioned the city had been erratic recently, and she would relax more if I could verify there were no hindrances. She presented it as unimportant, as though she hadn't transgressed boundaries. I inquired about sending me the documents. She hesitated before forwarding a folder. The bar owner's name was affixed to all documents. Amendments to leases, exceptions for capacity, temporary permits, all channeled through an entity not disclosed in previous filings. In response, I simply stated I couldn't offer advice on the matter. She returned home past midnight, seeming more acute than normal, and shared that the bar owner believed I was purposely being obstinate. She said he failed to comprehend why I had changed. She suggested perhaps I didn't need to be so rigid consistently. The following morning, she listed him as her +1 on the mixer invitation without my correction. She presumed I would still attend later. I chose not to modify the RSVP. Instead, I let it remain unaltered. A day subsequent to adding him as her +1, I submitted a revised disclosure for the contract, featuring an expanded scope. The same clause was retained. My name shifted from internal assessment to external supervision on multiple venues related to city-sponsored cultural occasions. One of them was situated on Market Street. I did not inform her about this change. I found it unnecessary. My evenings became less flexible. I departed the apartment earlier. I arrived home later. In response to her inquiries regarding rides or schedules, I provided timestamps and locations instead of queries. When she questioned if I could still drop by events merely to show support, I forwarded the conflict of interest language once more, this time emphasized. She modified her social circle, not mine. She ceased inviting me to events. She no longer saved me a spot. When people inquired about her spouse, she stated I was engrossed in audits and offered a smile as an explanation. She began arriving at places with the bar owner by her side, implying he had been there all along. At home, she maintained her routines. She continued using my last name when introducing herself over calls. However, my jacket vanished from the back of the chair while invitations became scarce. The expectation that I would eventually join her decreased. One evening, she displayed 2 outfits on the bed and asked which one suited better under the venue lights. I responded that I wouldn't be seeing either. She chose one without comment. The change was first noticed outside our apartment. There were fewer messages to shared contacts, fewer tags, fewer casual mentions of me in her posts. The bar owner took over the void. He had the access, the time, and the keys. By the week leading up to the city council mixer, she acted as if I were an immovable object rather than a companion within our shared space. She expected me to arrive late, though I had no intention of attending at all. The night of the event, she departed without inquiring about my plans. This single action spoke volumes. She moved swiftly and purposefully, already dressed, connected to another itinerary. The bar owner fetched her downstairs. From my window, I observed them standing close, heads leaned together, his hand positioned where mine once rested while we waited for transportation. My phone remained untouched on the table. No messages, no updates, no running late or check-ins arrived from her. Instead of venturing out, I chose to remain at home because my presence had been reassigned elsewhere. I scrutinized documents related to city-funded venues, noted inconsistencies, uploaded observations, and documented timestamps. The Market Street bar was mentioned repeatedly. I opted not to underscore it. The significance was already apparent. The following day, she returned brimming with energy, chatting away on her phone and chuckling softly as she traversed the room. She halted when she spotted me, concluded the call, and stated that the mixer had gone smoothly. She remarked that the bar owner had been extremely helpful. She mentioned people presumed we were engaged in some activity and didn't ask any questions. I merely nodded and requested her to move her vehicle. I required the garage for a site inspection. Over the ensuing days, the separation process took on a routine feel. She ceased synchronizing calendars. She omitted me from her plans. When she discussed upcoming events, she spoke as if I were an outsider, someone requiring updates rather than input. At one instance, she inquired if I could still introduce her to a city contact at the next mixer. I informed her that official channels were now necessary for such requests. She gazed at me perplexed, as though a door she had used countless times hadn't yielded. By the end of the week, she no longer made an effort. She had alternative access. She failed to notice she had lost it here. The city council gathering wasn't a celebration. It lacked music and speeches. Instead, there were huddled discussions, badges, and hushed negotiations among individuals who feigned uninterested conversation. I arrived early, utilizing an entrance different from the one she typically chose. Security verified my identity, scanned my badge, and ushered me in without comment, aware of my role. As an independent auditor, my task was to assess venue compliance and ensure city oversight. Seated arrangements were designated for me. I spotted her before she noticed me. Accompanied by him, she walked in mid-conversation, already performing. He exuded a sense of belonging, as though familiarity elevated his status. She chuckled, briefly touched his arm, and led him towards the registration desk. Her intention to meet with me later was evident. She repeatedly looked toward the entrance behind them. At the desk, the organizer consulted the list and halted. Announcing my name aloud, she directed me toward the seating area designated for auditors and city oversight. She spoke nonchalantly as if it were routine. That was when my spouse turned. Our gazes locked across the room, no expression of surprise on my face, no greeting from her, just a brief pause during which she reassessed the situation. She cast a glance at the bar owner, then back at me, then at the seating chart. I walked past them without slowing down. I nodded once formally, the same way I do with vendors and clerks. I didn't halt. I didn't clarify. I joined another group, people she was unfamiliar with, individuals who didn't look towards her at all. Behind me, I heard her reintroduce the bar owner again, this time more loudly, trying to establish him. It fell flat. From my seat, the room seemed to alter. Conversations readjusted. People took notice of where I was seated and who I wasn't sitting with. For the first time, the replacement stood beside her without explanation, and everyone could observe it. She didn't approach. Not once. Instead, she remained near him, closer than previously, as though nearness could rearrange the seating plan. She chuckled excessively. Repeatedly, she reintroduced him with slightly varied titles: partner at venue, supporter of community, collaborator for event. None of these labels seemed to stick. From my table, I observed the repetitive sequence unravel. People who usually greeted her cheerfully began to divert their attention. They nodded at her, then posed their queries to me from across the room. A council assistant approached my table with a file and inquired about deadlines. A licensing officer pulled up a chair beside me and asked if I was considering additional venues this quarter. The Market Street bar surfaced. I responded with noncommittal affirmations and took no notes. Across the room, the bar owner adjusted his posture. He stood taller, spoke less, smiled more cautiously. He eventually recognized that he had been brought as an accessory, not a qualification. My wife also noticed it. Her hand remained on his arm longer as if trying to keep him in place. When the event concluded, people departed in groups. She hadn't come to see me as I prepared to leave with my belongings. For a brief instant, it seemed she might accompany me, but instead she remained stationary and spoke to him, eliciting a nod. At home that evening, she refrained from disclosing her whereabouts. She made no inquiry about my night's activities. She put down her bag deliberately and placed the bar key conspicuously on the counter. I didn't disturb it. In the following days, she deleted my name from the emergency contact section of her event records, retaining his. The city issued routine notices 2 weeks after the mixer. Nothing sensational, no front-page news. Just emails, stamped documents, and revised compliance schedules. One of them pertained to the Market Street bar, necessitating a temporary halt and further examination. I received the announcement in the same manner as everything else, filed, allocated, and monitored. She discovered this at work, returning home ahead of schedule that day, phone clutched, coat still on. She mentioned that the bar owner was in disarray. She suggested that the establishment might lose its preferred position for the season. She questioned why the city had changed. I inquired if she needed me to move my car again as I had an appointment early the next day. She seemed to be seeing the room with fresh eyes. She revealed that she didn't realize my name held such importance now. She believed my profession was unseen. That night she did not say, "Not tonight." Instead, she waited. I decided to pack a bag instead, neither hurriedly nor secretively. I gathered papers, clothes, and my work laptop. I left the bar key on the counter and placed my wedding ring next to it. When I reached the door, she called out my name hesitantly. I continued walking. The latest news came months later through a mutual acquaintance. She was still organizing events. The bar owner remained active. The venues changed. My access did not. My schedule remained busy. My name remained on lists where it was relevant. She thought, "Not tonight," but bought time instead. It clearly demonstrated my unsuitable place. Appreciated for sticking with my tale until its conclusion. Share your thoughts below about these events. Further, unspoken narratives are forthcoming.